Hello guys, and it turns out nobody wants Russian gas, nobody wants Russian oil that much. Many countries have understood long ago they don't want to be dependent on anything from Russia, witnessing how the Kremlin uses Russian energy resources as instruments of blackmail and war. And some countries still needed a small push, an explanation, and it seems like the new US sanctions persuaded China and India they don't want Russian oil. And the first reaction is already visible because China has denied the entrance of Russian oil tankers into its ports, and India is prepared to do the same. And actually, these two countries were the main economic partners of Russia, and the main economic export part of Russia is, of course, its oil and gas, because Russia is not a country of inventions, production. It is a dig and sell economy that is already collapsing. Honestly, I think why did it take so long to use these sanctions against Russian core economic part? But I hope it will work out soon, most importantly, paralyzing Russia's allies from backing it up. So let's discuss how these new sanctions will influence Russian economy and why China and India already say no to Russian oil. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see the defeat and demilitarization of Russia and also protect yourself against their hybrid warfare and evil propaganda, subscribe. We discuss all of that on the channel. Sanctions are working. Unfortunately, it takes really long for them to be visibly effective, but they are working because Russian economy is already collapsing. We see that on the fluctuation of the ruble rate. It's obvious when you see the real numbers of Russian inflation and how they had to rise their key interest rates, and actually how Kremlin interferes in the economy itself, making it more and more centralized. But it will not save the already sinking warship Moskva, if you remember that beautiful episode from our recent history. But right now, the newest US sanctions hit Russia the hardest because they have targeted its core oil industry, oil refining industry, combined with the Ukrainian drones visiting its oil refineries. But right now, these sanctions were written perfectly well, and they actually stop other countries and other companies from cooperating with Russia and pretending they don't know the origin of the oil or the origin of the tanker. And it actually brought the results really quickly because since yesterday, China denied entrance to 3 tankers connected with Russia into its ports. Previously, perhaps people pretended that they come from other countries because Russian shadow fleet uses outdated, already signed off tankers that are dangerous for ecology and that are actually never mentioned and nowhere mentioned and can use any flag they want. But in this global world with satellite images, actually every government knows what are these, where are they from, and finally they were put into the list of sanctioned by the US government Russian vessels that are responsible for this shadow oil refining and export. And the consequences can be bad for the countries accepting it. And with all the support that China gives to Russia, economy goes first. And that is why, for the first time in the history of this war, China did not let Russian tankers enter its port. They carried 2 million barrels, but with OPEC, countries like Canada, USA, Brazil, you can easily find other oil products and stay away from the Kremlin. Subscribe to stay away from the Kremlin. demonstrate your solidarity with Ukraine and watch Putin in The Hague sometime soon, because I believe even his oligarchs are dissatisfied right now with what is happening, as these 3 Russian tankers are drifting in the Yellow Sea near the shores of China. China that definitely backs up Russia in this war, especially economically, had to say no. And thank you so much to the United States, and I hope that these sanctions will remain. If they remain, Russia will collapse in 2025. There are all the symptoms in their economy. And there are reasons, because apart from the Russian oil, they actually transport Iranian oil, and they actually use higher prices, and actually, too many actuallys in this sentence, but they violate international oil agreements and international agreements in general in every possible way. So the punishment is very correct, and actually took it very long. India is the country that also buys a lot of Russian oil and is prepared to say no to, according to various sources inside the Indian government. They don't want to mess up with US sanctions, and once again, they are already looking for other options and other companies, presumably in the Middle East, where they can get oil. There are lots of countries that trade oil and don't use it as instruments of blackmail and as instruments of war, and that don't use this oil as a fuel for tanks and missiles that destroy thousands of innocent lives. Unfortunately, in this world, morale and values do not restrict people that's shown as sanctions, but then fortunately we have sanctions, and they are working hard to not just stop but defeat and then demilitarize Russia. Because believe me, there are a million other branches they should have invested their money in, instead of ruining Ukrainian lives or threatening your countries with hybrid or sometimes even very real warfare. Recently, I have read another article that very wisely explains that the situation inside the Russian economy is even worse than we know it. That's obvious. Russia is a country of censorship and like total substitution of reality. But what they say is that there are clear evidence that during these years of full-scale war, Putin made banks pay for lots of his war projects, thus leading to the collapse of the banking system. So these expenditures that we see on Putin's war economy can be doubled if we take into account how much Putin took away from the banks. I won't be surprised if people's money will disappear, but it seems like that's okay for the population of Russia. Let me know in the comments below, would you like a separate video about that? And please, please, please be careful of scammers. They are super active these days. I keep stopping various pages on X, on Facebook, and here they come in comments and invite you to speak on other social media platforms. I never do that. Even if I wanted to, I literally don't have time for that. Please trust my moderators. They take care of our community. They protect us from Russian trolls, and they protect us from scammers that want to use your time, sometimes want to use your money, your dedication. And I feel very bad whenever I learn about such stories. So please trust Martin, please trust Philip, please trust Rudy, and please trust Spencer when they tell you that I do not contact with you. That is true. I never invite you to chat. I never talk about other things or encourage you to do anything. All of the official information that I want to share about NEFO campaigns, for example, always appears in my videos on the channel. So please, please, please be careful. If you want to see the updates from my everyday life, subscribe to my Instagram, X, Blue Sky, Threads. All the links to my pages that I personally run are in the description of this video only. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channel. Check our merch shop for lots of good items that work well as reminders and conversation starters about Ukraine. And most importantly, thank you for standing with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!